What are the leading causes of disability in the United States? The answer is arthritis and mental health problems. So why does the CDC say that heart disease, cancer, and diabetes are the leading causes of disability in the United States? In this video, we explore this misalignment, examine what a disability is, and see how information ended up adding to the confusion about disease rather than clarifying it. The goal here is to highlight how readily organizations, not just the CDC, slip away from accuracy. This stems from failure to understand disease rather than malign intent, at least in my mind. Organizations that are pressured to do something about disease without accurate understanding have no alternative. The benefit of Zazari Project is we focus on discovering accurate understanding with no pressure to act on it prematurely. With that in mind, let's take a look at how the concept of disability got screwed up. Be sure to check out zazariproject.com to see all kinds of new and interesting information thinking about the chronic disease problem differently. This is the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention website about chronic diseases. As we've seen, the CDC is very motivated to deal with chronic disease and tends to frame problems as they pertain to chronic disease. Its portrayal of disability is no different. Chronic disease is a huge problem. 6 in 10 adults in the US have one. That means it's more common to have a chronic disease than not. Those diseases typically include heart disease, cancer, chronic lung disease, stroke, Alzheimer's disease, diabetes, and chronic kidney disease. Chronic diseases are defined broadly as conditions that last 1 year or more and require ongoing medical attention or limit activities of daily living. That basically defines disability. When we're talking about chronic diseases, really what we are talking about is disability. The trouble with these diseases, as is typical of disability, is they're also leading drivers of the huge healthcare expenditures we have each year. 4.1 trillion in the US as of 2023. If we return to the second sentence in this paragraph, it states that chronic diseases such as heart disease, cancer, and diabetes are the leading causes of death and disability in the United States. We talked about the leading causes of death in a previous video, but this one is focusing on disability. First, are these 3 diseases, heart disease, cancer, and diabetes, really the leading causes of disability? Before we jump into that, let's take a look at what a disability is. So here's the definition based on the CDC. Right up front, impairments, activity limitations, and participation restriction. That pretty much sums it up. A disability is a condition of the body or mind that makes it difficult for a person with that condition to do certain activities or interact with the world around them. Some common types of disabilities include vision problems, difficulty in movement, more mental issues related to thinking, remembering, learning, and communicating, hearing, mental health, and social relationships. When we think about chronic diseases, such as heart disease, cancer, and diabetes, how does that fit in with these? When we think about heart disease, it doesn't clearly fit in, but maybe it affects movement because people can have chest pain and shortness of breath when they're trying to get around. Diabetes in the long run can affect vision and cause blindness if it goes on long enough with poor control, as can high blood pressure and many other things. So these are more symptoms rather than specific disease conditions, since many diseases can cause these problems with people's ability to interact with the world around them. The interesting thing is, when I search CDC and leading causes of disability, what comes up is this, the landing page that we just came from, where it says that heart disease, cancer, and diabetes are the leading causes of death and disability. However, when you look anywhere else, the leading causes of disability are different. This is one website, WebMD, which is a well-known resource, and here's another one, MedicineNet. I pulled up both of them to show you that the top 4 or 5 causes of disability in the US are pretty consistent, though the order may be a little bit different. In this one, we see again the definition of disability, and number 1 on the list is arthritis. Arthritis can affect any joint in the body, and the disability is difficulty walking, climbing stairs, being able to do their job, etc. The WebMD source is similar. It's the most common cause of long-term disability. 1 in 3 people say that arthritis affects their ability to do their jobs. That is very disabling and extremely common. And yet on the landing page at the CDC, it didn't even mention arthritis, the #1 cause of disability. MedicineNet goes on to report back pain, which in my mind connects to arthritis. Back pain can be divided into back pain that resolves and that doesn't resolve, which is not clarified here. So we're going to treat that as arthritis. Number 3 is ischemic heart disease, which is the same as WebMD, heart disease. The reason that's a disability is because it can cause shortness of breath and difficulty ambulating. Number 4 is depression. So now we're into mental health conditions, and we all know that can certainly affect a person's ability to maintain a job and interact with the world around them. On the WebMD site, mental health is down here at number 4. And worth noting is that mental health problems affects 1 in 5 adults. Now here's a CDC website that shows that how common is mental illness. 1 in 5 Americans will experience a mental illness in a given year. Even more so, 1 in 5 children, either currently or at some point during their life, have had a serious debilitating mental illness. How come that didn't make it on the landing page? Finally, on the WebMD page, there's cancer. So cancer itself may not be debilitating, but the treatment for it absolutely can be. Chemotherapy and radiation is brutal and really affects people's ability to work and interact with their world, which is the same on the other website. So as we've seen here, the top causes of disability are pretty similar. We see arthritis, heart disease, cancer, and mental health problems. And yet, on the CDC landing page, we see 2 disabling diseases that do not include the top 2, and then diabetes, which we didn't even see that on these lists. On MedicineNet, we see stroke, Alzheimer's, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, and number 9 is diabetes. The interesting thing is on both of these websites, they really don't report what the disability is. So it just says that the rates are rising fast, it's linked with obesity and conditions like heart disease. It's costly to manage, but it doesn't say a single thing about how this impairs someone's ability to interact with their world or live their life. We'll return to diabetes in just a moment, but one other page I found on the CDC website is talking about disability. And essentially, once someone has a disability, they are prone to developing more, which is the focus of the CDC's page here. And you scroll down and down and down, and then other concerns, conditions, and prevention considerations. It states that many related health conditions and chronic diseases can be prevented. Chronic diseases are among the most common and costly of all healthcare problems, even though many chronic diseases can be prevented. So it's kind of a broken record right here. And if you look at it, buried way deep in this website is arthritis, where it does say that it is the most common cause of disability among adults. So it acknowledges arthritis, but interestingly pins it under this paragraph that says it can be prevented. I do not know how to prevent arthritis, nor does anyone. The same can be said of mental health conditions. To end this video, I was curious if diabetes actually qualifies as a disability. I went to the American Diabetes Association, which says the short answer is yes. It says, under most laws, diabetes is protected as a disability. Okay, that's a description of discrimination, not a person's ability to do their job and interact with their world. So that's a change in what we're talking about. Both type 1 and type 2 are protected as disabilities for the same reason as above. And number 3, people with diabetes can do any type of job, sport, or achieve any life goal. Then the question is it actually a disability? I asked my husband about this. He's a type 1 diabetic. And truly, disability is on a spectrum and depends on what your goal is. Someone who's a pianist would certainly have a disability if they lost 1 or 2 fingers in an accident. To other people, that may not be a disability at all. They didn't need those extra fingers. As a diabetic, he says that activities that would require prolonged concentration and intense concentration could be a problem just because his sugars may drop and he might need to step aside to manage those. So in that way, there is an accommodation needed to help people with diabetes, particularly those on insulin, to be able to perform their jobs. Am I trying to say that diabetes is not a disability? No, I'm not. People do have to make accommodations in their life to function with that disease. My point is when it comes to accurately depicting the leading causes of disability in the United States, this is not an accurate statement. Heart disease, cancer, and diabetes are not the leading causes. Heart disease and cancer are among the leading causes, but the leading causes are actually arthritis and mental health diseases. This reinforces that the CDC cares about chronic disease. However, I think it has slipped into framing everything in that context and has sacrificed accuracy in that process. It's so important that as we learn to understand disease and dig into the problems we have with conveying that information, I think it's really important that we get clear on what we know and what we don't know about disease and stop trying to frame information in a way to make ourselves look smart or move agendas in a certain way. They may be well-intentioned, but they're just simply missing the point. We need to understand disease, which is what the Zaria Project does. Even more interestingly is when we put death and disability together into one phrase, we find that it takes on a whole new meaning. It's a bit mind-blowing. So stay tuned and be sure to check out what are the leading causes of death and disability in the United States. And as usual, don't forget, please leave your comments below. I'd love to hear from you and get your feedback. And be sure to like and subscribe. We'll see you soon.